Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for the Is This What Homeschool Is Really Like? Everybody has been kind of tossed into this doing education at home. And, it brings to light, especially folks that have considered homeschooling. Um, how do you do this education thing at home? What counts? How do you keep your kids engaged? How do you work from home now that many of our jobs are remote and still get this done? So, lots of questions, and we're going to go through some things to think about, some tips and tricks, and some recommendations for looking at this as first of all an opportunity, and second of all, what happens if this is a little bit longer term than what we're expecting right now. So, first of all, this situation that we're all finding ourselves in right now is not really what homeschooling is really like. First of all, there's a lot of just general anxiety, right? The parents, as well as kids, everybody's routine has been disrupted. Homeschoolers aren't confined to their homes daily. You probably know that already, but we participate in a lot of shared classes, field trips, support groups, socials, all sorts of things like that. And all of those things have been canceled. Homeschool group leaders are also scrambling to find ways to finish their courses online, to keep their groups getting together through this period of social distancing. So it's really different for all of us. And in a lot of aspects, we're sharing a lot of the same questions. So a lot of folks are thinking, okay, my kids are home now, the school hasn't sent any work right now, but I want my kids to be learning, so I should become a homeschooler so I can teach them at home. And that's one of the misconceptions about homeschooling is that you kind of need that legal designation to be teaching your child at home. You absolutely don't. I mean, you are a parent, a guardian, um, and what you do in your home for your child's education is what you do in your home. So at least here in North Carolina, and depending on, where you're from and what your state's requirements are, but specifically speaking here in North Carolina, homeschooling is a legal designation. You register as a private school and then you homeschool, and there are a couple of requirements that you need to fulfill going along with that. Typically, once you open your homeschool, your child cannot be concurrently enrolled in a public school. So, if you were to open a homeschool, you then need to withdraw your child from the public school. And historically speaking, of course, this is a brand new situation and principals are going to have to figure out how to deal with such things, but historically, it was not necessarily easy to just go back into public school and say, we homeschooled at this level and now my child's ready for such and such a grade. That will probably be dealt with differently as we return to school from this break. But that's one of the reasons people are not recommending opening a homeschool right now and officially homeschooling. The best thing to do is wait out this period. And then once the schools start to send work home, if that works for your family, great. The only reason to open a homeschool at that point would be, if you're really not liking the kind of work that the school is expecting from your child, then maybe self directed or home directed education might be a better choice. But we really haven't come to that point yet with the school closures. Now, if you've been thinking that, well, this is a great trial run, I've been thinking about homeschooling, so now I kind of have to do this and let's see what it's like. In some respects, yes. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to try out doing some things, maybe with your children, with your family, that you haven't had a chance to do because they're on a school schedule. On the other hand, like I said, this isn't really what homeschooling is really like. So, because of the anxiety, because of the abrupt change in your child's routine and schedule, probably in your routine and schedule, it might not give you a good idea of what that feeling is like, what that environment is like. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're thinking, "Oh wow, this is really harder than I thought. It's not going as well as I thought. My child's not being as cooperative as I thought." Uh, the tension, the abrupt change, the difference from, they went to school on Friday and then all of a sudden they don't know when they're going back. That's can really affect your child's attitude about doing schoolwork, about learning, about cooperating for you as opposed to, listening to their teacher. So those are things to keep in mind when you think about whether this was a successful trial of homeschooling or not. So, and it's also, our schools have been thrown into just as much uncertainty as we have been, and they are doing their best. They want your children to succeed. So to really, be fair to the teachers, to the principals who want that success for your child, you don't want to undermine their credibility when your child is ready to go back into school to return from this break. We want them to put their faith in our teachers and in that system and in their classmates. So, turning everything upside down, saying we're not doing this work the school is sending home, but you're going to have to go back to it later. Really uh, undermines the kid's sense of, who do I listen to, what do I need to learn, and who can I trust in this process. So, we want to be fair to that system too and give them time to figure out how this is going to look before we really judge the school's responses to how things are changing so rapidly right now. So, all of that said, we're still facing a period of our kids being at home with us all the time now, right? So, how do we handle it? How do we get them to kind of do some work to keep their skills sharp? And especially for those parents working at home, to give you time to do what you need to do. So, one of the things that took me a long time as a homeschooler, so I hope this is a shortcut for all those people finding, themselves suddenly in this position, is that it's all about rhythms and not necessarily schedules and time blocks. What's done in a classroom might take an hour to get through a math lesson when you're doing it one on one or one on two, even one on four. It could be 10, 15 minutes. It's just such a different environment when you're one-on-one with your student. So, when you say, okay, we're going to do math for an hour and science for an hour and English for an hour, and your child is really struggling to kind of fill that time, or um, the beauty of being able to do this at home is the flexibility so that when you come up against a topic maybe that they're struggling with, you have the ability to kind of walk away from it for a while and come back to it on their schedule, and when maybe they're more receptive. We certainly know from science, from studies of classrooms, that there are rhythms to a child's day, to their waking hours, times when they are more receptive and more able to process information, typically early in the day, about an hour after they've woken up, um, maybe an hour to 2 hours after the lunchtime meal are really good. The brain is really awake, really alive, and more receptive. So if you're looking for ideal times to introduce new concepts, to do the things that maybe your child struggles more with, those are great times a day to do it. So if you take those times and build a rhythm of your day, of your week around those things, schedule the harder things, the less desirable things to do in those times when they may be more receptive and more cooperative, and then build fun stuff around it. So you want to think of it as like a curve, in terms of we're going to start off easy, kind of build up to the harder things, and then work our way back down to kind of relaxing and having some family time. It's a beautiful rhythm for a day, and this is kind of how we structure some homeschool day. So for example, um, we get up in the morning, we read together, we put on an audiobook while we're having breakfast, or uh, certain days of the week we do block scheduling. So we might do science like Tuesdays and Thursdays, and history Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example. But um, I might have a documentary for them to watch or an informative video, something from YouTube, something I read out loud to them. So we start our day kind of easy and then work up to everybody kind of going and doing their math work and then coming back together, checking in at lunchtime. So, what are you working on? What are you thinking on about? What are you struggling with? And then through the after, kind of making everybody a to do list, a list of goals. And when you give it to your children as goals for their afternoon, they're much more receptive to it than just a to do list that they have to check off because they feel that sense of accomplishment. I didn't just check something off the list that I have to do. The goal is, because I want to learn X, Y, or Z. And even if it's, a little bribery goes a long way. So even if it's, you get these things done, you get 15 minutes or half an hour of time on electronics for every task you check off. That works beautifully. And don't be afraid, to use those things. You need to learn to speak in your child's currency. And your child's teacher has probably figured that out. I'm sure they have some way of rewarding and stuff like that besides just grades. So it's time now for us to kind of figure out, okay, in our homes, what is the currency in our relationship, and how am I going to help my child feel rewarded for doing these things that they might not want to do. But in this period of nobody kind of knows what's going to happen next, how long this is going to be. The schools haven't sent work home yet. It's okay to take a real deep breath and just start slow. Um, I would say that it is hard to break patterns of electronics and transition to learning if you just say, okay, we're just going to take this week and you can kind of veg and do what you want. Um, it's hard to get out of that. So, what are some alternatives to kind of start getting into a rhythm without your child feeling like, okay, now all of a sudden mom or dad is teacher too, and it changed your relationship when really what they need from you in this period is they really need mom or dad or grandparent, guardian, to say, I'm here for you, and we're going to be okay. So there are some great alternatives to kind of occupying your child's time without necessarily going to electronics and without having to sit them down in front of worksheets as well. For example, a maker space. So you may notice that now that your kids are home a lot more hours of the day, it is much more difficult to keep things neat and cleaned up, and part of it is just letting go, being okay with the mess. That's part of the rhythm and routine that's going to come with time as you figure this out too. But designating maybe even a small space, a small corner of the dining room, or maybe even their bedroom or the playroom as maker space, and saying, we're going to contain the mess to this part, but you can be creative and make things here and see what kids come up with. Gather all the craft supplies, all those empty toilet paper rolls, wrappers, cereal boxes that go empty. They're great tools for just letting kids' creativity run wild. So get out the sequins and the glue and the scissors and put them in a space that's accessible to your child, and just kind of put it out and see what they come up with. Sometimes it helps to sit down, just start making something yourself, and they come and ask, "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, I just decided to be creative, and then it kind of spurns them on to see that they can do this without necessarily a pattern or a worksheet or something designated for them to do. So, more information on that idea, there's a great book by Julie Bogart called The Brave Learner, and she talks about setting up creative spaces and inviting children into this idea of creativity. And when I say children, I mean it works for kids all the way up through uh, their teenage years. If you follow Right at Homeschool, WRIGHT, at Homeschool on Instagram, she was talking about her child made a full set of teeth with braces just out of paper and wire and glue, and um, just because she was bored and the stuff was there and she was curious about orthodontics because she had just gotten braces on. So things like that. It's amazing what kids will come up with. So a maker space is an art space, a creative space is a great way to kind of just give kids a place to go to when they need something to do so that you can get work done or you're just tired of the TV or the video games. So projects in that along that line, there are great, projects that you can start maybe as a family. Start planting a garden for the summer or the spring, container gardening, and let your kids get really involved. So we can't get books from the library right now, but there are great books electronically available from the library's collection on um, how to container garden or small space gardening, or, if you have the room in your yard, let your child go out and plan out that kind of thing. So that's a great project to take up at this time of year. And there's so much learning that goes into it because, you got to figure out what to plant when, where do I live, what's the geography, and what's the weather. So many directions you can go with that. And a family tree. Maybe now is a great time to sit down and have the kids draw out a family tree, do some research into your family's background. If they're really kind of stuck on the electronics and the video games, let them come up with their own ideas for video games or for board games. Sit down with, a journal, some drawing tools, let them draw out scenes for their own video games. And then so you take all of these things and you plant these seeds of ideas, like the garden or the family tree or the video games, this next 2 weeks. And you kind of let them just explore and gather information. And then, in the event that you need to find more things to continue the learning at home, we're going to build off of these in the continuing weeks. So, there is science, there is math behind planting a garden. If you need to mix your compost and your soil and you need the right nitrogen, and first of all they need to learn the science, and that is accessible to kids at all levels, but they also need to figure out the volume of dirt and stuff. So you see how these projects seem simple and um, elementary to begin with, but we can really extend the learning later and tie them into our subjects. So in homeschooling, this is what we call unit studies. You take a topic and you dive deep into it and integrate all of your subjects kind of into it. So that's one of the ways to look at this period of transition, is to come up with ideas for what things are my kids interested in and what can we start that they can start learning about, and then move forward, extending the learning down the line. So again, projects are great. One of the projects I mentioned was designing their own game, would be it video game or board game, but games themselves are terrific learning tools. There are a ton of, board games out there, of course, beyond just your basic Monopoly and Scrabble, which are great learning tools in of themselves. But if you go to Amazon and browse games, if you look for educational games, you're going to find things you won't believe are out there. My kids have a card game called Valence. It's about chemical bonds. So the numbers on the card, you're playing numbers in a typical card game kind of fashion, but you have to create chemical bonds, molecules. It's kind of a sneaky way of learning, and it's a ton of fun. They also have a game called photosynthesis. I haven't played it with them, so I can't really, but I know it has to do with you have to get all the things that go into photosynthesis to kind of win at the game. And then there are, logic is a really great thing, and we learn it through all the games. Even my preschooler has a game called Snail's Pace Race, that it's a cooperative game, so it's not really competitive. It's not difficult for kids that age to kind of understand, but they start learning colors, numbers, taking turns. It's fabulous games like that. So use games and think outside the box. But a great game of chess. Take this opportunity to learn how to play chess. It's an invaluable logic skill. Uh, Another great thing, start their own business, right? We have a lot of opportunity right now in terms of problems that need to be solved. And, what can kids do to reach out to the community in a way? What way can they serve the people around them? Maybe what creative talents do they have that they can explore now? And what does it look like if they wanted to start their own business? So even if it's the young ones wanting to plan for a lemonade stand in the summer, hopefully, when we can get out and do that kind of thing again. Um, have them make posters, come up with, inventory, like what would they need? What ingredients do they need? How would they sell it? How would they market it? It's a great opportunity to kind of just give them an idea and let them build a booth in your house. And just to the rest of the family, kids love to put together their own plays and their own shows. Let them play at that. There's incredible learning happening there, and we forget that before they went into school for X number of hours a day, that they were learning a lot, playing with their friends and doing those creative things. So go ahead and let that happen again. Observe as parent what is happening, what are they interested in, and then that will be what you build off going forward when you want to make it a little bit more get a little bit more forward momentum, build on that learning. So older kids journaling, this is a great time to start a journal. People are going to be looking back on this period of history in the world, even if it's only 2 weeks. This is going to go down in history. So let them journal from a tween or a teen's perspective. It's going to be great to have that to look back on to share with their kids someday. A newspaper, maybe a neighborhood newspaper. They can call neighbors or email neighbors, or have you post on your neighborhood Facebook page or next door to say, hey, does anybody have anything they want to share? Can I interview you? I'd like to write an article. Let them create their own newspaper. And this is something they can do virtually too with other kids in the neighborhood. So get other people involved. Um, Another great tool we have used for years in our homeschool is audiobooks. Audiobooks are fantastic. We know in terms of vocabulary, in terms of grammar and structure, comprehension, that audiobooks are as great a learning tool as physically reading the book. So if, it's hard to get your kid to sit down and, pore over the pages of a book, the only thing, processing and spelling are the two things that don't translate well to audiobooks. But otherwise, all of those other reading skills, comprehension and um, stuff like that are it's just fine to use audiobooks. So grab audiobooks from the library, from Audible. If you've been, holding off on that free trial from Audible, now's a great time to use it. Go ahead and grab some audiobooks. And while the kids are listening to the book, have them doodle, journal, draw pictures. They're not seeing the book, so what if they made their own illustrations? What if they created a book cover themselves? So all those kind of things are great alternatives that are, our kids probably do in the summer, they probably do on the weekends, they do when they're given freedom, and we think now that they're home, they're missing this educational time, we need to do something educational, and then those kind of things are their free time. Those are their learning time. And that's really what I, want people to take away from this, is that play and uh, expression and searching and the curiosity of kids is a valuable learning tool. So go ahead and lean into that right now. Um, it's going to be okay. They're not going to lose, their skills. You can play, you know, addition war or multiplication war with cards. Keep those skills sharp for sure. Have them write a letter to their grandparents or to their friend at school that they're not seeing right now. Get them started on email. Let them email their friends. And so you can keep those writing, reading, mathematics skills sharp. And this is a great time for your child to explore their interests, those things that they lose time from when they're in school. So, that helps them maintain that love of learning. Um, and without it being bogged down, oh, now mom is making me do worksheets. That can be a struggle and it can put a strain on the relationship. And that is certainly not what we want to happen right now. So, letting them explore and observing how much they learn in that way, I think it's going to be eye opening for a lot of parents to see, how much their kids are motivated to learn and explore when kind of the trappings of school are removed. We take it for granted that during the summer, it's just a break between, this school year and that school year, track outs and stuff, and we fill them with learning activities. And now, we may have an extended period of such a thing. So I think there's a lot for us to learn here in terms of what are the things maybe that school is missing too. What skills don't they emphasize in school? It's a great time for a life skills class. Learn how to cook, make a cleaning schedule, learn how to budget for those once every week or once every 2 week grocery runs, um, how to pay a bill online. It's tax season. If your teenagers are home now and you're doing your taxes, make sure they're sitting with you through that process. um, those life skills that we're missing because schools don't have time, they're not on the test right at the end of the year. Great time to kind of fill with that. And the this entrepreneurial mindset of how are we solving problems in the world today. Another great skill that isn't really emphasized in school at all. They are there's very much a here's the curriculum, here's your scope and sequence, and that's what we're going to stick to. What happens when you get off of that? That thinking outside the box, that problem solving is a skill that is going to stay with your child through through this crisis and beyond. So I hope that is helpful in terms of just some ideas. This is an opportunity to look at things differently, to give your kids some more freedom to explore and learn in different ways, and for you as a parent to get to see that in action, because we miss a lot of that when our kids are in school and learning away from us. So now that they're in front of us, this great time for some family unity. What can we do together? What are the things we enjoy to connect on? And game time, going for walks, doing nature exploration. Still get out. Tadpoles are hatching all over the place, so if you have a little one that loves to get out in nature, find some water and look for tadpoles or other kinds of things. There'll be baby birds, and your kids are going to open their eyes to things that they don't have time to see, and you're going to have time to see those things happen, um, and those milestones that we otherwise miss. So it is a great opportunity, and if we stay positive about it, then this could be a great thing, a great time of reconnection for a lot of families and a lot of kids who feel like they haven't had time to kind of connect with their families or to explore the things that they enjoy. um, they're gonna be able to get back to that right now. So I wish everybody the best, and if you have any further questions, you can contact me anytime at Laina, Laina, at trianglehomeschoolresources.com.